Hello, everyone, and thank you for the introduction and the chance that I can introduce our group's the very recent publication. And today's my talk would introduce what the microneedle patch is, and also I would like to suggest what would be the ideal engineering design for the microneedle patch. I guess some of the people here may already know what the microneedle is well. But I believe my talk today would break some common sense that you have by showing the destructive aspects of the microneedle patch, which has not been shown in the previous papers. And I'm Jung-ho Lee from POSTECH Mechanical Engineering Department, and I'm from Professor Lim's group. So let me get started. Let me follow the content slide here. So the blood loss is the most rated factor that increases mortality and the morbidity in trauma, especially when we get accidents, like here. So it is like highly required to have emergency treatment after the accident because the blood loss leads us to the death before arriving at the hospital. So blood loss is commonly said as the high responsibility factor, for, which takes 35% of all pre-hospital deaths. So the most common and straightforward manner to suppress the bleeding is mechanical pressure application, but it often requires the additional adjunctive treatment because of the insufficient closure of the damaged blood vessels. And this is why the simple and ready-to-use kits are currently in the very high demand recent days. So before jumping into our research topic, let's quickly see how the current the major hemostatic medicine works. Here, the thrombin and the fibrinogen here, which are considered as one of the most effective hemostatic medicines, they promote the formation of clots on wounds by producing a fibrin monomer that forms the polymer via non-covalent interactions, resulting in aggregated nanofibers here. So, but the point is, although these methods are well known as one of the most effective standard protocols, the high price and the instability of a short half-life limits their usage as a ready-to-use emergency kits. So here, on the other hand, when we focus not on the formation of the blood clot, but on the prevention of the lysis of the clots, we still can promote the hemostasis, but also with a stable medicine, which would be a bit cheaper. So the stable and cheap medicine, tranexamic acid here, which would be called TXA from now, has been less frequently, yet alternatively chosen as a synthetic medicine. And the TXA comparatively binds to the tissue plasminogen activator, thereby suppressing the lysis of the fibrin here. So this is quite important because we can bypass to form the blood clot comparing to the previous conventional manner. So let's see how the TXA is efficiently and effectively delivered. The microneedle patches are an attractive topical delivery manner because they have the disadvantages of first of all, the advantages of hypodermic injection, but also it's transdermal patches. So unlike the conventional syringe bulky and the rigid needles, which would reach to the deeper parts of the skin and which might potentially damage the blood vessel and the nerves, microneedles do not reach deeper tissues where the blood vessels and the nerves are prevalent. Thus, the minimally invasive microneedle patches, they do not only achieve the high absorption rates of the drugs into the skin, but also it minimizes the risk of the infection and bleeding and the pain as well. Here's the real photo of the microneedle patch that we made. However, we haven't thought about the question here. Is a microneedle patch always damage-free? So what is the skin is highly susceptible? That would be our key question today. So in this study, we expand the usability, the usefulness of the microneedle patch toward the bleeding tissues, where a skin barrier is no longer needed to be penetrated. So unlike the conventional topical drug delivery system, or which would be used for the wound dressing, we suggest here a microneedle patch design, which would be compatible with the bleeding wounds. Our research proposal provides both two pathways here. First, peripheral pathway, drug pathway insertion to the skin via the microneedles. And the second one, the direct absorption to the wound, which exposes its blood vessel to the external environment without a microneedle. So next, unlike the intact parts of the liver here, where the hepatocytes and the blood capillaries are kind of sealed by the serous membrane, the damaged area causes the exposure of the blood vessel microcapillaries, which poses the high risk of the extensive rebleeding, which caused by even by the very tiny microneedles insertion. And here it shows the sharp contrast between the conventional microneedles and the peripheral microneedle patch, which I would call to indicate my microneedle device here. In terms of the rebleeding from the damaged parts and the resultant leakage of the drugs caused by the extraction of the blood caused by the second damage. So the microneedles located at the edge parts of the skin, they are inserted into the normal intact skin tissue, which is covered by the serous membrane. And the middle part, the microvessels exposed to the external environment is directly contacting to the microneedle patch, which may directly absorb the drugs. And now let's see how our hypothesis is supported by the experimental grounds. So the tranexamic acid, TXA here, is concentrated at the tip of the dissolving polymer microneedles through the two-step molding fabrication strategy. I'll get to the fabrication part if I have a question later. And the hyaluronic acid here, which should be called as a HA now, is chosen as the building block material because of its rapidly dissolving property and the biocompatibility and the stability. So a small amount of the colored dye, which is the methylene blue, is also loaded with the together with the TXA solution here to visualize simply for the visualization of the distribution of the TXA in the entire microneedle patch. And it is noteworthy that the size of the non-invasive region of the entire microneedle patch can be controllable so that we can decide the size and the shape of the non-invasive region based on the shape or the size of the wound as well on the site. So for the confirmation, the liver of the SD rats was chosen as a kind of representative bleeding internal organ. So individual microneedles, which are indicated by the yellow arrows here, and they are inserted into the edge of the wound. And also we can see the intact non-invasive region here in the center. And both of them are clearly confirmed by the optical coherence microtomography, which will show the cross-sectional image of the skin tissue and the inserted microneedle patches as well. So for the mechanical characterization parts, the uniaxial compression tests were performed by using the universal testing machine here, and all the samples were used in the used in this experiment were very much strong enough to penetrate the skin tissue, regardless of the size of the non-invasive region, as obviously the robustness of the single microneedle has nothing to do with the non-invasive region's size. So here, additional experiments for the mechanical characterization were designed and performed to analyze the required force for the penetration of the entire microneedle patch array, into the tissue. So the microneedle patches with and also without the non-invasive center were evaluated here. Because the conventional microneedle patch here, the dark color, had higher density of the microneedles at the limited space. Our device, the peripheral microneedle patch here in the red color, the compression force required by our device, peripheral microneedle patch, to insert the microneedles into the skin tissue was much milder than the force needed by the conventional microneedle patch. So here, the peripheral microneedle patch here, the first one, was quantitatively compared with the wide range of the tranexamic acid application strategies, namely the conventional microneedle patch here, and the needle-free patch here, and the droplet spraying, and also the most conventional manner, intravenous injection here. The bleeding time was shortened the most in the case of the peripheral microneedle patch, as you see here in the red bar here. So here we hypothesized that unlike the other method here, the conventional microneedle patch and the droplet spring here, we think it'll be inefficient in reducing the amount of the blood loss because of the applied drugs were mostly removed, like I would say, mostly swept out by the excess amount of the blood. So it is very interesting for me that the conventional microneedle here is not even improving the drug absorption rate comparing to the needle-free patch, but rather it causes the further bleeding compared to the needle-free patch. And we are attributing this phenomenon to the additional damage has caused the additional bleeding. So eventually, the total amount of the bleeding has increased by using the microneedle patch. And here, however, meanwhile, so in reality, many patients are suffering from the low, self-hemostatic ability because pretty much of the patients in the world, they are under the administration of the heparin, which is like a anticoagulant. So they cannot self-heal very well in a short time. So here shows how amazingly our device works in these cases. Just like the previous graph, the peripheral microneedle patch shows the best performance here, but with more significant differences comparing to the other control group, comparing to the previous graph. And also, it is noteworthy that the excessive bleeding prevented the absorption of the blood, absorption of the hemostatic drugs much more in the case of the conventional topical drug delivery system like here than in the stable injection like the IV here, which actually did not show the great progress in the previous example here in this case. So what's actually more important part is the quantized size of the inflammatory region differs in each case. So the conventional microneedle patch showed an even worse healing aspects comparing to the needle-free patch, which may not damage the wound. So we can quantify here, the microneedle patch shows even double amount of the inflammatory response comparing to the needle-free patch. On the other hand, our device, peripheral microneedle patch, delivers the drugs very well, but doesn't damage the wound again. So it eventually shows the better performance in the wound healing, eventually leading to the 1/3 of the inflammatory response comparing to the needle-free patch here, and the 1/6 of the conventional microneedle patch. So now we can conclude that the microneedle is quite disruptive in case of the application to the damaged tissues. Also, the mastodon trichrome staining images here shows the further validation of the how we select the criteria of the inflammation area by showing the collagenous fibrosis here in the skin tissues. In addition, the histological analysis revealed the relatively lower number of the neutrophils, plasma cells, and also the T lymphocytes in the following slides. I'll get it later. And so from the tissues applied, which is applied by the peripheral microneedle patch here in the middle, and the conventional microneedle patch on top, and the needle-free patch on the bottom. So we can quantify once again, the peripheral microneedle patch shows much better aspect in terms of the inflammatory response. So here again, the CD3 immunohistochemical staining clearly differentiates our peripheral microneedle patch from the conventional microneedle patch and the needle-free patch in terms of the inflammatory response from each group. Here, so to sum up, the engineering strategy for the fabrication of the microneedle patch which is to be applied to the bleeding tissue is suggested. And also we also showed how to evaluate the mechanical property of the fabricated microneedle patch based on the change of the morphology. And also we also have suggested the guideline for the analysis of histological investigation on the tissue where the microneedle is inserted. So I think it's quite noteworthy that not only just a simple mechanical characterization for the group to characterize the mechanical strength of the microneedle, but also knowing how much strength is required to penetrate the skin is quite important in terms of the susceptible tissue, because the entire pressure may cause another secondary rebleeding, which would decrease the healing aspects. And also we have proved the practical and the actual performance of the peripheral microneedle patch comparing to the very diverse conventional manner. And it has even shown the better performance than the IV, which would be commonly used in the hospital. Finally, the more important point would be the histological analysis can evaluate how destructive the microstructure is when you apply the devices to the damaged skin tissues. So the results were published in the Advanced Healthcare Material Journal last year as kind of the further study of our group's previous research paper published in the Biomaterial, which focused on the closing the wound once again, but it did not contain the bleeding issue as well. So please refer the paper if you have some interest here. And we are also looking forward to publishing the further another research papers by using the similar concept and the strategy in the near future. So here, finally, I appreciate many supports from our group members in the Professor Lim's group at POSTECH. And yeah, thank you for your attention, and any questions are welcome.